Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm a doula in Washoe County, Nevada, a Medicaid provider, a lactation educator, childbirth educator, and mom of 18. You can find me and connect on doulainreno.com. Remember, give a shout out to those who are brave enough to share their stories with us on how they have become parents. Let's dive in. Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm the host, Jennifer Campbell. And today I have on Alexandra Galaska. Is that right?
Yep.
Ooh. Jump in and share your parenting journey with us.
Well, it's quite vast. It's quite complicated, but it's definitely a story worth telling. We can back up a little bit. So I was born into two active duty military members that divorced before I was one. And I lived in 13 different places before I was 18. So I was constantly moving, constantly trying to adapt to whatever scenario was thrown at me. And it really taught me the value of having that calm stability for a childhood, and that even though it is, I learned so much and I benefited so much. There are other similar childhoods that I did that didn't thrive as well as I did. And so I really, when I became a parent, wanted to create that foundation for my children, grow those roots, not necessarily geographically, but just in our family and the traditions that we had and the things and the rhythms that we had in our daily life. And so I was very, very intentional by the time that I became a mother. I did 5 years active duty in the DC area. I pinged around in the Pentagon and a whole bunch of different places. And so when my husband and I find that
Wow.
it's good.
I mean, like, wow. Wait a minute. Just briefly slow that little section down a little bit
Okay.
about how
Okay. Well,
you've pinged around.
yeah, right out of college, I did ROT, the Air Force ROTC in college, and that was in St. Louis. And then when I joined the military, my first assignment was actually at the Pentagon. And so I was a second lieutenant at the Pentagon. I was a financial officer, and I did some incredible, incredible missions that I was a part of and that I supported, including the Air Force Honor Guard and Band. And so I was able to support foreign dignities, and whenever there were different events that went on, I got to participate in those. I had friends that worked in the White House. I had friends that worked on Capitol Hill. I had friends that were congressional liaisons. I also supported a helicopter squadron that has a very important mission in Washington, D.C., and I was able to actually in one of the goodbye events that I participated in before I went into the intelligence world was they actually had me on a helicopter with the doors open, and we flew through DC during the Cherry Blossom Festival,
Oh
and that
my
was
gosh.
just such an incredible memory. I'll never forget that. That was such a special moment for me. And then I did a few years in the intelligence world, and realized even though I was really good at my job, I wasn't super passionate about it.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I didn't, I saw people when I joined the military, I envisioned myself being a colonel one day. And then as I was starting to go through it, I looked at the people that were 5 or 10, 15 years ahead of me, and I looked at their lifestyles, and I looked at how um, they had a work-life balance, or what their relationships like were with their children and with their own parents. And it wasn't necessarily appealing to me my whole life in the military. And so I kind of retired from the military lifestyle and got out. And I actually got a job with Goldman Sachs, but then I decided not to go through with it and became a yoga teacher. So I had a complete 180 after that, and then started to decide that we were going to have a family. And I was very intentional in how I wanted to cultivate this life and cultivate my family. And I had, I think most first moms, they have this idea of what they think motherhood's going to be like, what pregnancy and birth, and um, they kind of like paint this dream in their mind, which is great. I think that's wonderful. But
Right.
mine was completely shattered because when my daughter was born, she was injured by a pharmaceutical product, and it started a very long journey for us dealing with her injuries, working with countless doctors, having overnight hospital stays. And it really forced me at the beginning of motherhood to start advocating for me and my family and to ensure that we had all the information that we needed to make the most informed decision for our family. And I just naturally started sharing my research. And as I started sharing my research, I realized other people were like me. And I've since had two kids since then, and they were both home births. The last two were home births, and it is just really interesting that as I've grown in my motherhood, I've kind of had this community grow with me of people who are just looking to make more informed medical decisions. Not
Yeah.
necessarily that we all have to make the same decision, just so that we honor the right for everyone to accept delay or decline. And so that's kind of interesting that you brought up the parenthood journey because it's been very well aligned with how I've had my own business and my own passion in how I pursue it.
I mean, that's kind of crazy to me. Well, how cool. Like it's a good crazy. How amazing that you figured that out and then had kids. How much did it change? How much did your passion change when you actually went through pregnancy, labor and delivery, and postpartum yourself?
Oh, 180% or like 180 turn. Like if
Yeah.
you would if you would have shown me just a glimmer, not even my full like day in the life, but just a glimmer of my life. My daughter is getting ready to turn 6. So if you would have showed it to me 7 years ago, I would have thought you were absolutely crazy. I would have thought that you were just barking up the wrong tree. To see my life how it is now and the things that I value now and the things that I'm passionate about now, they have completely changed. The things that I thought that I would be dedicating my life to be doing, I don't even really even think about anymore. Those are just not even on the main uh, forefront of my mind. What I care about is creating generational cultural change so that the things that I went through as a new mother, my daughters will never have to go through, and my son's wife will never have to go through. And so that drives me in what I'm doing, and it's really kind of like completely broke through my scope of understanding of what a mother is and what her role is. And it's really helped me to wake up every day and just be so passionate about this because I know there's other mothers out there like me. And I actually created a shirt that says a mother's instinct is data because so many of
Oh,
us.
that's great. I want that shirt. How do I get that? Okay, well, we'll talk about that.
Send me your address and I'll
Okay.
send it to
Okay. But
you.
sorry, like that is great. Well, I want to pause you there to ask a question because in birth work, you and I are different. A lot of women in birth work had a traumatic situation happen, don't want the traumatic situation to happen to someone else, become a doula, breastfeeding, whatever, because and not that this is bad and not that they think about it this way, but subconsciously they want to protect and save those situations from happening to somebody else, which is great. I didn't become a birth worker for the same reason. I had a super positive emergency hospital situation, but it was super traumatic and very positive. And I just realized more support would have helped me a lot, even though I had a very positive experience. So, and that was 33 plus years ago. We don't want to talk about that. You're more logic driven because you said that. So I feel like it was always my goal as a birth worker to educate because you can't make informed consent decisions if you don't have all of the information. That's not being informed. And medical
hmm
providers tend to give you enough of the information so that you make the decision they want you to make,
hmm
right? So
Yeah.
I was so big on educate, because I don't care what decision you make. You said three things. Um, accept, deny, or what did you say?
Accept, delay, or decline.
Accept, delay, or decline. I don't care which one you do. I have no emotional attachment to how you do it, but I want you to do it from a place of education. So I think a lot of people in birth work are more emotionally driven. I think that there's a place for that, but that can make it challenging.
Right.
And yeah, anyway, I went off on a little tangent because I'm so
No,
excited
I
to do.
think it's really important what you said because I experienced that as well. I have patients, parents, and providers that are constantly in my DMs. I've been doing this for over 5 years now, almost 6, and I've talked with hundreds, thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of different people. And it's really interesting to hear their seed that blossomed into advocacy, and where a
Yes.
lot of people started from was, from trauma, like you were saying. And unfortunately, the natural inclination to try to protect others from dealing what you've dealt with, and I know this to be true because I've struggled with it myself, is that we kind of trauma dump our
Yes.
experience onto the people that we're trying to help. And that's not necessarily helpful because they might not have the same risks that you have or the risk threshold that you have. They have some external factors that you're not considering. Maybe they have a health history that really interplays, or their own intuition that isn't scientifically explainable. They could have something in their gut that's telling them to go a different way. And so I think a lot of people, and I don't necessarily, this is just contained for doulas, I see this with a lot of medical providers as well, is that they are so intent on a desired outcome that they will kind of forego humanity and forego respect of individual choice, that they will just try as hard as they can to get that patient or parent to that desired outcome. And I think that's where we see medical coercion. I think that's where we see
Yes.
gaslighting. I think that's where most of people who feel that they have a negative experience in a hospital or medical setting is not necessarily just because of a medical product, it's how they're treated before, during, and after getting that
Oh,
product.
yes.
And so that's something that I advocate for, is underlying informed consent is incredibly important. I actually came out with a new framework last week, and it's informed consent is here, because it's really hard to kind of wrap your mind around informed consent, either if you've never been exposed to it before, you never understood the of it before, or from that medical professional standpoint where it's, you think informed consent is a checkbox, that's what you've been told, is that it's a legal requirement, and that's it, full stop, there's nothing else to the conversation. So this framework kind of helps both sides. And the C is that your condition is explained. So you understand the diagnosis, because how can you make an informed decision on a medical product if you don't even understand your diagnosis? And then the L is layout of treatment. So it's not necessarily just this one medical product, but what is the treatment, the lifestyle changes, the procedures, the further down the line, if this treatment doesn't work, what are the, other things that might be recommended? And then the E is effects. So each effect of that treatment part in that treatment plan is discussed, talking about the risks or the benefits, and then moving into the A is the alternatives. So, what are the alternatives with that provider, and then what are your alternatives across the board? Maybe the provider is limited in what they can provide on their training, their expertise, their license. Maybe you can go elsewhere and find, a second opinion or some other alternatives that are available. Not that you necessarily are rejecting that first provider, but that maybe you can complement, the treatment. Maybe you can supplement it or find a different path. And then that R is incredibly important. If you're listening, please, please, please pay attention. That R is responses required. So if you don't have the opportunity to collaborate and ask questions and give your response to your diagnosis, the treatment plan, any of the effects discussed or alternatives, then it's not informed consent. Informed consent is a shared decision-making process between you and your provider, and it's something that isn't coerced, it isn't manipulated, and where you get to make that final decision.
I want to pause here because like you and I know what we're talking about, but informed consent might people might I don't think you understand it till you're faced with it and realize you didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go, and we're using labor and delivery. This is across the board in any situation. Um, so I'm going to use erythromycin.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get to the hospital, this is not something that normally is discussed in OB appointments. And it's also, you're not getting all the information, even if it is. You get to labor and delivery, you're in active labor. They come in and want to ask about erythromycin and vitamin K for the baby immediately after birth. Okay. You're in active labor. Please remember that. Keep that in
Mm-hmm.
mind. Like, you're not necessarily in a situation where you should be making any decisions at all and having paperwork handed to you. So the first thing that I hate is that the conversation should have happened months ago. The
Agreed.
paperwork should have been signed months ago, not right now in active labor. Okay. I don't know what that is. Well, erythromycin is the ointment we put in the baby's eyes that kills a bacteria that causes blindness. 100% true. That is what erythromycin is. Some people worry that it makes the baby not see as well, but baby's vision is blurry already. Might be true. Okay. Like let's even just let that one go. No person in labor, not one person I have ever met says, well, wait a minute. There are not people blind all over the world from bacteria from birth. So, what's the bacteria from that causes blindness? Well, it's from sexually transmitted diseases that you were screened for in pregnancy and show negative in your results. I literally had an OB said, I don't know who my patients have slept with from the time that I give the test to the time that they have the baby.
I'm internally screaming right
I
now.
internally screaming. It's not nobody I work with. It's nobody in my area. It was somebody I was on a panel,
Oh, that makes me hot.
right? So let me get this straight. You're not told, hey, we screened you for sexually transmitted diseases during your pregnancy that you didn't even know we did. You didn't even realize that happened at that appointment when we gave you a vaginal exam. That's first. That was not informed consent. You are negative on everything. That was 2 months ago. The bacteria that causes blindness are from those sexually transmitted diseases that you tested negative on. Do you want to give erythromycin? Now, if I haven't slept with anyone except for my partner, and like if I get to make the choice, if I'm concerned that in the last 2 months I've somehow been exposed to a sexually transmitted disease, which means I was sleeping with other people or my partner was sleeping with other people, and there's a chance. They're also never asked if they want to be tested again.
Hmm.
Like, how long does that test take? Can we do it here while I'm in labor and delivery? If it comes back negative, I don't want erythromycin,
Hmm.
right? Like, that is how much lack of informed consent is with one thing, erythromycin, because the bottom line is they just want you to give erythromycin to the baby, and it's a liability issue, and they don't even want
Right.
to take the chance, even though the percentage is like less than 3%.
Yep.
If you have the sexually like, it's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So, Alexandra, when you're talking about informed consent, I just mentioned one thing, erythromycin in the baby's eyes and everything that goes along with it. Did you know you got tested for sexually transmitted diseases? Did you know that they were negative? Did you know that that's what erythromycin, the bacteria that erythromycin is killing? Are you concerned that there's any issue? Do you want your baby to get something that they absolutely do not need? Why? That is such a massive breach
Yeah.
because there is no informed consent. And I'm sure you have a bazillion, every single decision you make in the hospital is the same way. And this is a really innocuous one. Like, will the baby get harmed from having erythromycin? Probably not. It's just like a no harm, no foul. Let's just do it to everybody. And then we don't even have to have the conversation. But you should have the right to know and to decide. And if you want to get it, great. Your decision. I does not affect me at all. But and you have a business. And I also want to correct something you said. You said I built up a following. Hundreds of thousands of people follow you.
Yeah, I don't really I am very, very careful because I try not to, it's very, very tempting, right? It's very tempting to be kind of prideful and fall into that trap. So I'm very mindful of that. So I don't really see my own identity in it, but I see
Right.
a reflection of the culture. And it is encouraging to me, so, so encouraging to me on how fast Just the In Search is growing. And we have over 1 million people that use our website. I started a podcast just a few months ago, and it's now like the top 1.5% podcast. And, that to me is so crazy because it just shows how hungry people are for this
Yeah.
information. And it just shows that no matter what decision you make, whether you accept, delay, or decline any or all medical products, You just want to be informed. You just want to know what your options are, and you don't want to be shamed or silenced into submission. You don't want to be medically coerced. You don't want to feel as if the wool is being brought over your head or the rug is being pulled under you. You just want to be knowledgeable and confident in the decisions that you make for you and your family. And so I look at that and I'm just kind of like, this has nothing to do with me. It's how it's the culture that is just so hungry for it. And I really see a lot of community and I see a lot of people that, yes, there are the extremes that kind of battle it out in the comment section. I get a
Right.
lot of DMs from different sides of things and I get a little whiplash sometimes in my DMs of people upset with me. But I believe truly that in order for us to shift that culture, in order for every single person to be in that medical setting, whether it be birth, surgical, at a pediatrician's appointment, whatever it might be, that it be a culture of informed consent. And I want to pull out because I think you brought up a really good point when you were talking about, the eye ointment. I think that it really highlights a failure of public health education. I think that we should have the very first thing that we should have the capacity to understand is are the biological events that occur in our own body because it's by our own body that we are able to understand anything else in life. And so we should have that ability to be able to understand, okay, if I take acetaminophen, how does that affect my body? How does it affect my child's body? If I accept a vaccine or if I accept a biologic, how does that actually work? So many times we make these decisions out of fear or out of just not understanding how they actually work. And so I really, really advocate and I love when I get medical students that reach out to me because they're in that moment where they can push back a little bit and say, well, why? Why does it do this? How does it do this? So you can have that extra understanding. Because if our medical providers don't even truly understand, then they're not able to train and help their patients.
So I want to take this a step further because I am so grateful so many people are following you. That means that there's an awareness that they need to. And
Yes.
in my perception, I wish there was a greater awareness of the need to even like need to know this information,
Hmm.
right? So like that makes me feel great that people are like, wait, because it's not about what your decisions. You're right. There's the like far one way and far the other way, but most people are somewhere in the middle. I remember getting vaccinations for my kids when they were younger. I didn't want to put something in my kid's body, but I wasn't anti-vaccination. I looked up every single thing, measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, like polio, everything, what the outbreaks were. Like I was thirsty for that knowledge, right? What's the outbreak rate? I remember in New Mexico about 30 years ago, there had been a measles outbreak. And I looked at that and thought, okay, of the people, the kids who came down with measles, what percentage were vaccinated? 85. Okay. What did they do when you got the measles? What's the protocol? Like, how do they get rid of it, basically, right? And are the vaccinated people, was it less or more severe? No, there wasn't a severity difference. And the treatment was exactly the same. And so in my mind, I was like, so why would I get that vaccination if these are the facts? But I took it a step further because I lived in Alaska, and where you live has a direct correlation of what the odds are of
Hmm.
contraction of certain diseases. So it's not just broad scope. There's broad scope, right? Bird's eye view of a vaccination. And then there's what about your area? Well, I lived in an area that was so cold in the winter, a lot of things wouldn't survive. So that gave me a different perspective. It doesn't matter if you're pro or against. Again, it's that in you're saying informed consent, I'm saying education, same thing. My question is, if you have informed consent, let's say I'm a mom who decides not to vaccinate. I've done my homework, I've looked at it, or not to give erythromycin. I know how people are treated in the hospital, and that they have to sign the paper saying we don't want to give erythromycin, and if my child is blind, it's my fault, right? A release of liability, essentially, and malpractice. They have to sign the form in the middle of labor, and then the the baby nurse will say, well, can I give you some stats and information on why you should get it? So it's not even then what? And then what? Because I see people constantly, when they've made a super educated decision, have all the information, feel good about it, then they're questioned about the decision that they've made. So what do you do for that, for bridging that gap?
Well, I think it just goes back to understanding the biological events that occur whenever you accept that product, to understand how it works, the limitations of it, what the manufacturers say. That's why I focus so much on inserts, because I believe inserts to be that gateway into informed consent. And for those that aren't aware, manufacturer inserts are legal documents from the manufacturer that they submit to the FDA. The FDA regulates it. It's publicly available, free to access on the FDA website. However, it's not very user friendly. So I come in
Yeah.
and 99.9% of my website is sourced from .gov resources. I've actually taken FDA trainings and I've learned how to read FDA, the inserts, and I've learned to read different aspects of, since we're talking about vaccines, of how vaccines come to market. And I actually am trained in business. My degree's in business. And so I've really taken a look at the industry and maybe some potential financial conflicts of interest that I know every parent and patient and provider needs to be aware of. And then I kind of I have a free training course where I go through all of this, no email required to access. It takes 2 to 3 hours. And I say, for anybody that is interested in having some kind of I don't want to say spine for back of lack of better words, but if you make a decision, having those resources and developing that skill before into that environment is so helpful, because then when you do get those stats from your medical provider, who most likely is just kind of reciting something that they got from a training or maybe a pamphlet or something that was provided to them, I've talked to a lot of medical professionals that say they don't read every single study, they don't read the footnotes, they don't read all that stuff. They kind of just provided this information, they kind of just recite it back, and that's verified through lots of different people. But most of them, when they say that, they haven't looked into what the manufacturer insert says. They don't understand that, okay, so we'll talk about DTaP or Tdap, which is given to pregnant women, and then DTaP is given to young children.
Right.
They don't know, most of them don't know that in the mechanism of action section of that insert, it discloses, the manufacturer discloses that the level to determine immunity to pertussis, also known as whooping cough, is unknown. So if the metric is unknown, how do we actually know for certainty that this product can prevent transmission of pertussis? We don't. It's scientifically unknown. And there are limitations of effectiveness sections in other inserts that say not everyone who accepts this product will be protected. And again, I never share any of this in attempt to sway, just so that
No.
you know, as an informed consumer, what the government and manufacturers say about their own product. The other thing that I'll bring up is, when you're in that environment, one thing, there is an excellent resource, but, and I have to say it before I forget, it's called Physicians, and they are doctors, scientists, researchers, all of the above, that have gone through every single disease that a vaccine is on the market to prevent. And they go through all of that data and they walk it through with you. And it's all cited. It's incredibly dry and it can
Yeah.
be a little boring to read. But if that's information that you really desire and really hope for, that is an excellent website to have bookmarked. So if you're in that environment and you need that quick resource, I would definitely bookmark that resource. It's free. It's free to access. Really, they call them disease information statements, and so you can just go and say, okay, my pediatrician is really pushing this one vaccine. I just want some information. Maybe while you're sitting in the waiting room or before the appointment, pull it up, research it, so then you have that data that you can use to make that informed decision.
I love it. And I want to talk about the swaying. Just because I didn't immunize my kids doesn't mean I think everybody should not immunize their kids. I did certain immunizations that, like, my kids got tetanus. They were barefoot in Alaska growing up,
They got it, or the shot?
They no, they got the shot.
Oh, I thought you said
Like,
they got. I was like, oh, I hope
no,
they're okay.
no. I mean, that was one that I thought, look, if kids are barefoot running around in Alaska, and the odds are like not high, but moderate, you know, and I
Mhm.
don't want them to get tetanus. And this, like, you have to make a decision. Do other people not get it? Yeah, it's not about swaying the decision. If you want to get erythromycin, I am 100% get
Mhm.
it. Like, when I say I don't care, it's not that I don't care about people. Their decision doesn't personally affect me. So it doesn't matter to me what they choose. And you're saying the same thing. What I will say is that when you disseminate this information from the CDC, from the .gov sources, not from Jen's blog post about vaccinations, right? I'm not talking
Mhm.
about that. I'm talking about, like, from the places that are supposed to teach us about all of this. When you look at those agencies and their information, it's highly likely that you will question and decide not to do things. You will pick it apart. It's not because I'm trying to sway you to make that decision. It's because I definitely want you to be educated and learn the information. And do I know that that will result in you not maybe getting some things? Yes, it will, because you're going to read the same information that you read, that I've read, that you read way more than I've read. And you probably will come to a similar conclusion. But it's not about swaying anyone. It's not some big bandwagon to not vaccinate. I mean, I'm picking on that one. That's super volatile.
That's I love that you said that because I've said this so many times before. Even if anybody knew my story and why I do what I do and the decisions I make for my own children, I would never want them to make their own decisions for themselves and their families because of me. I don't
Right?
think that's informed consent. And so that's why when I share information, I always say you have to make that final decision because you have an intuition that has you the second that you become a mother. I believe the second you become pregnant, and I believe that it grows with you, that nobody else can cultivate, only you. And I can never make that decision for you. And I would never want that precedent to be set because there's going to be a situation that you are sitting in an emergency situation because kids are kids. And it's important for you to already kind of built that muscle of listening to your intuition, cultivating that research skill, finding the resources that you can quickly go to way before you need it. And so if you're just kind of abdicating your authority to a social media influencer or even to, somebody in kind of an authoritative state, either the CDC, FDA, or a science communicator, whatever it might be, that is not going to serve you well in the situations that really matter. You want to have that already built up in your own family, in your own motherhood journey. So then when you are that kind of diverging path, then you can reflex that muscle and say, okay, I know what informed consent is. I know what it feels like. I know what I value. I know what my family values. I know, I have a lifetime of anecdotal evidence and observations for this child that nobody else does. So I'm going to make the best decision for them. And that's what I really, really try to encourage people. And I always talk about knowledge is important, but confidence isn't too. And I believe that they are connected in certain, and so having knowledge before you need it will build that confidence. So then when you are sitting in the medical professional rattles off statistics or rattles off whatever they're trained to do, then you can sit in that conviction and you can decide what's best for you.
Yeah, because that is where it gets really hard when you look at somebody whose first name is doctor, and it's intimidating and overwhelming, and you have your information, you feel good about it, and yet I think the second we get pregnant we start to feel like a failure. I didn't eat the right thing, I'm not walking enough. I'm like, I'm not excluding men or women who have not had babies, but like, you get pregnant and you're like, shame, guilt, fear, and failure, they are strong, right? You don't want to
Hmm.
mess up this child. And it's hard, even with your conviction, to sit there and listen to everything and realize, like, this doctor who has all this training is not as up to date on this as I am, and I'm sticking to my conviction, even if that means I have to switch providers. That's a hard
Hmm.
place to sit because you already feel the fear, shame, guilt, and failure. Am I making the right decision? We second guess ourselves as moms all the time because we don't want to do it wrong. And
Hmm.
first, there isn't wrong. Like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And you can do something and decide to move forward differently. And, I mean, and you need to feel good about those convictions and stand true in that. And I know that I have a daughter pregnant right now, and
Congratulations.
oh, it's number 10. Very
Oh
excited
my
about
God. Wow, that's amazing.
number
Double
10
digits now.
grandchild. But she's had mental health issues in her life growing up and in the past. And I said to her, pregnancy doesn't mean that you're going to have more mental health issues, but we do know that you already have them. And I think it's best for you to be the best possible version of yourself by the time this baby's born. So I think it would be worthwhile to support your mental health with some sort of therapy. How do you feel about that? But it's the same with advocate, it's the same with all of this, right? It's not a destination. You're not going to
Hmm.
arrive and be like, I'm good, I'm making all the right decisions now, I've arrived. It's never going to be that way, but you
Yeah,
can feel good and convicted in this one.
oh yeah, I've dedicated over 10,000 hours. I actually sat down and calculated. I've dedicated over 10,000 hours reading inserts, learning all about these industries, and yet I still have hesitation and I still question, am I doing the right thing? What is the best thing for my child? Because I have three children. I have a 6-year-old, a soon-to-be 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and they all have different personalities. They all have different health profiles. They all have different inclinations for different things. And so I sometimes I'm like, am I completely off my rocker? Like, am I doing everything wrong? So for anyone that's listening that feels overwhelmed, like it is a journey. It is a process. There is no final destination. And one thing I did want to point out when you were talking about sitting in a provider's office and kind of having dealing with that little friction, I actually see that now as a gift. If you're sitting in a provider's office in your pregnancy and you do not feel respected and you do not feel informed, that is actually a gift to you to find a different provider who will respect and honor you. Because when you're in that birth space, your hormones are so dependent upon yourself and other people in the room. So if somebody is going to project their fears, their trauma, their hospital policy onto you, you're going to internalize that, and that's going to deal with your pain suppression. It's going to deal with your labor progression, and that's going to really affect your own birthing space and environment. So I would now say, okay, that is a gift that that provider is letting me know that we don't jive well, and I need to find someone else.
I love you reframing that in the positive. Thank you. Alexandra, we could just sit and talk for hours. I wish you lived closer because I would love to sit and talk for hours. So great. And all your links are in the description. People can find you. You have a lot of like your stuff is just absolutely phenomenal. I can say that. I cyber stalked you. Um,
Thank you.
super sexy, not creepy at all. And
That's okay. It's all welcomed.
yes, and people can find you and look and get the same information. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing, but for what you do. Like I really appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on. I don't always have a very soft place to land, so I appreciate you sharing that with me. It's very encouraging.